Okay. Hey everyone, sorry I couldn't be there personally, but I thought I'd still make this little talk for you guys. See if we can get it done in one take. So, seeing as today is Lazarus Saturday, and tomorrow is going to be Palm Sunday, or Hosanna Sunday as some call it, I thought there was only one thing that we could really talk about. That would be icons. So, today, let's talk about icons. Now, as we know, our church is beautiful. It has great architecture, great art, but primarily the art is in regards to icons. Now, if you were to go to a Catholic church or any other real church really, you would find a majority of statues, beautiful depictions of Christ, beautiful depictions of the crucifix, everything, but they're more a fan of statues more than we are. And why is that? Well, from what I've learned, from what I've figured out by asking priests, primarily it extends down to just the fact that it says you shall have no graven images. You will not worship a carved statue. So we're just sort of taking this literally more than anything else. It's not that the Catholics are wrong because they have statue, but we're just going to hold on to this, and it's more of a traditional thing at this point more than anything else. Now then, moving on, where does the word icon come from? It comes from the Greek originally, but it went to Latin and then Greek. Icon, meaning likeness or image, which we now associate as icons. So, let's see. The first iconographer, according to tradition, would be St. Luke. And so we can then determine that icons are just about as old as the church itself, with this icon here being from the year 500-ish, so from the 6th century. Still very old. This is an icon of Christ along with some saint, and I can't figure out who it is. You can tell it's Christ because within the halo you see the cross, and that is reserved solely for Christ. You will not get anyone else with a cross within their halo. St. Mary might have stars in her halo, but Christ gets the cross in his. Now then, in order to become an iconographer, you must be schooled in iconography. No one can just pick up a paintbrush and make an icon, which is why iconography is such a big deal. In our church, these are much more than pictures, and I feel like so many people come to our churches, they see the beautiful art, and no one really knows anything about them. As far as we're concerned, they're just pretty pictures, and we're going to correct that. So first, you must be well versed in iconography. You need to learn the symbols, you need to learn what everything means within an icon in order to be able to do it. Also, icons are more than pictures in that they are consecrated with the Holy Merun. So, these are special things. Everyone can have a picture of an icon in their house, or maybe they'll have an icon, but the ones in the church are consecrated with the Holy Merun, so these ones are actually very important and very special. So, let's see. What else is there? So, as I said, they're consecrated with the Holy Merun, and one must be very well versed, very well educated in order to paint icons, which are why there are not that many icons. You will find we have a few iconographers in the US and in Egypt, and that's just about it. Not everyone can make them. Moving on. Now, as you may have noticed, most icons tend to be very similar. You'll look at one icon of, say, the crucifixion, or of or as we've shown here, the raising of Lazarus. They all look fairly similar. And why is that? Because according to tradition, they should be drawn off of an original. They're not drawn freehand. They're not re-envisioned. All of the icons are supposedly drawn off of some kind of an original. Sometimes there'll be slight modifications depending on which Orthodox church is painting the icon or the specific artist, but for the most part, these should stay fairly similar, which is another difference between a picture and an icon. Icons do not use live subjects, so even if you're making an icon of a saint, an even more modern saint, that's not using a live person. One reason is because saints are not alive. To be canonized into a saint, they have to be dead for about 50 years, so using them as a live person would be a little weird. Also traditionally, but this isn't so well seen, is that saints are supposed to have the same face. All icons are supposed to have the same face. Why is that? because we are all reflections of Christ. We are Christ-like, in theory, and we were made in the image of God. So the saints who have perfected their reflection of Christ should therefore look like him. What you'll notice is that they'll have different facial hair or look slightly older, but the goal is that all of them should look roughly the same throughout, men and women alike. So between all of the orthodoxies, Russian, Greek, Coptic, Indian, Ethiopian, all of them, they all use icons, and between them there's not that much of a difference. For example, if I show you, let's see, this icon and this icon, one of them is Russian and one of them is Greek. Now, I think it'd be kind of hard for you to tell which one is which without me first telling you, but the one that I put up first, aka this one, is Greek, while the second one here is Russian. Not much difference. One is, of course, Christ during the Passions, and one is called the icon of the Pantocrator, which I'll get into in a bit. But the tradition of iconography is fairly well preserved between all the orthodoxies, and this is something that we do not really change or vary between churches because it is such an ancient tradition. It's something that we all agree on, and it's not something that came up after the divisions of the church. So, what is the purpose of an icon? Well, one purpose of icons is to display beauty, to make our church much prettier, to make decoration, but also to serve as a window into heaven. It's supposed to allow us to see the saints, to see Christ, to see everyone, all the holy people, all of the important events that happen in the Bible that we just can't see anymore. So on top of that, they're also supposed to allow us to tell a story. So an example of it showing us a person, you have the image of Saint Mina, or you have the image of Christ and the Holy Family entering into Egypt, right? Or even more, Last Supper. These are all instances of stories being told by the icons. Now, one thing about icons is that they are not drawn, they are written. You write icons. Why? Because this is further proof that, or this is an exemplification of the fact that icons are only supposed to be done of special events or special people. They're supposed to tell stories. So as you can see here, we have Christ blessing the bread. We have St. John the Beloved resting his head on Christ. If you count them up, you'll find that there are not 12 disciples around him, so one of them is missing, i.e. Judas. So there's a story being told of the Last Supper, right? So the story of the Last Supper is being written in this icon. Or if I go back to the image of Christ in Egypt, we have him next to water. We'll assume it's the Nile. You have palm trees. You have the 3 pyramids in the bottom right corner. So obviously it's not to scale. Obviously it's almost drawn like a child would. But this is it telling the story. This is the story of Saint Mary going through, or carrying Christ on the donkey with Saint Joseph beside her, and they're running away to Egypt. Joseph is carrying a sack, possibly of all of their belongings, and you can tell they're in Egypt because there are those tiny pyramids. So that is the story being told when you write this icon. A quick note about St. Mary and icons, you'll notice that generally she'll have 3 stars, one on her left shoulder, one on her forehead, and one on her right shoulder. In this icon you can't see one of the stars. Reason is because this was to demonstrate that St. Mary was a virgin before, during, and after the birth of Christ. So that the reason she's always clothed in blue is because she is supposed to be the maiden of heaven. She's supposed to be angelic and heavenly, so she's wrapped in the splendor of the heavens, aka the sky. She's supposed to have stars and beauty around her, so that's why she's constantly depicted in sort of a blue cloth around her. Now if we go back to the icon of Saint Mina, we'll also see a story. There's a monastery there, perhaps the monastery of Saint Mina that we all know, and there are 2 camels, one sitting and one standing, indicating the part of his story where his body was discovered because of a sick camel that was healed in one spot, and also in the spot where he was buried, and also the camel that would sit there and not move until they found the body. So icons are written telling us a story. Now then, let's see. Also, a popular icon here would be the icon of Abraham and Isaac, and a lot of times there'll be Greek writing to help identify the story. So you'll notice under Abraham's arm it says in Greek, Abraham, Nem, Isaac. So you know this is Abraham and Isaac. And the story is fairly apparent. We have a small boy tied up on top of logs, so obviously he's going to be a sacrifice. We have an older gentleman above him with a knife, so clearly he's doing the sacrificing. We have the angel with his hand like this, which actually is a very important thing, but I'll get into a second, telling him, stop, don't kill your son, as we know in the story. And you'll notice on the right, there is a small lamb, or a ram it's supposed to be, next to a bush, symbolizing that after Moses lets his son down, they find a ram whose horns have been tangled in a bush, thereby God giving them a proper sacrifice to have. So, all of these stories are written into the icons fairly well. Now, hold on to the hand thing, that's important, and I'm going to get to it in a bit. Next icon to look at is the icon of Philopater Mercurius, or Abu Sufyan, or Lover of the Father Mercurius, whatever you want to call him. Now, his icon is actually kind of special, in that his icon has nothing to do with his life story. If you learn his life story, he was a general in the army, and was Christ-fearing, and he was given a sword by an angel, and was a great warrior and lover of God, and then was martyred. Nothing to do with him stabbing a person with a spear and having a saint in the background waving at him. However, this story happens after his death. Now, the person in the back who's waving to him is actually Saint Basil. Saint Basil the Great, who at the time was suffering because the king, King Herodias, was giving him a hard time, essentially. He was making Saint Basil's ministry very difficult. So Saint Basil prayed to God and to Saint Macarius, saying, could you please help? I'm struggling in my service here. And the next day, or the next night, Philopater Mercurius appears to St. Basil in a dream saying, don't worry, it's taken care of. And the next day he woke to find that the king had been stabbed by a spear. So as you can see in this icon, it's Philopater Mercurius over the evil king, showing that he has conquered him, stabbing him with a spear, holding both swords, one from his military weapon, and also the one given to him by an angel. Saint Basil in the back, as a symbol of, I asked you to do this, you have done this on my behalf, thank you. And so icons always have an interesting story, and it's always worth looking into the story of the icon to better understand what exactly is going on with this icon. Now, let's see. Moving forward, if you will remember, there was the icon of the angel, this one, with his hand like this. Yeah, with his hand like this. That's important. Back when icons were first being written, back when they were first being written in ancient Rome, hand gestures meant something. When you were about to give an important speech, you'd raise your hand, and everyone would be quiet. That's why if you watch cartoons or videos or anything of an orator about to give a speech, he goes like this, and everyone sort of quiets before he speaks. Hand symbols meant things, and this one meant silence, I'm about to say something important. For example, I'm sure all of you have seen the icon of Saint Mary being given the message by Archangel Gabriel telling her that she will conceive. You'll notice that Archangel Gabriel is generally like this, saying, I'm about to say something very important. So if you watch the hands and icons, you can generally learn something about the story. So in this icon, you see the angel going like this, telling him, wait, listen, I have something important to tell you. And the important message, of course, being, don't kill your son. Now, among icons, there's a very, very famous one known as Christ the Pantocrator. This one is very famous. It's written throughout all of our churches, and it's one of the oldest and one of the most famous. Now, This is supposed to be Christ the Pantocrator, the all-powerful, which is what Pantocrator means, in case anyone missed that bit. Pan meaning all, and Krator coming from Kratos, meaning power, so all-powerful. You'll notice he's holding the Gospels, and he looks very stern. That's because he's supposed to be the stern judge. He is the all-powerful, the almighty judge of humanity. Now, going back to the hand, you'll notice his hand looks kind of funny. In all of our iconographies, you'll find Christ is sometimes like this, known as benediction hand for all of the people who remember their anatomy. Your ulnar nerve is damaged, you can't do benediction hand. Why is this important? Because you have 3 fingers pointing up towards heaven, symbolizing the Trinity, and you have 2 fingers pointed down, representing the dual nature of Christ while on earth. This, however, is not an Orthodox concept. This would be more common in Catholic churches. However, in this icon, you see more of this sort of a thing. Now, what does this hand symbol mean? Well, it's actually interesting in that it's spelling Christ in Greek. You have Isos Christos. You would have the I being your pointer finger, the C being your middle, your crossed thumb and ring finger forming the X, and your pinky forming the next C. So, Isos Christos. So the common abbreviation of Jesus Christ being ICXC. You have Isos Christos being formed just by this, which is why sometimes you'll see priests bless the congregation. He'll have this sort of a hand motion. He's saying, blessing you with Christ, with this sort of a hand motion. You'll see this sometimes, you'll see this sometimes, representing the 3 Trinity and then the 2 nature of Christ, so it's modified benediction hand, I suppose. But hand gestures mean something, and as they developed, as the concept and the art of writing icons developed and grew, the hand gestures started to mean something and continued to, which further illustrates the history of these icons and how old they are. Like I said, they're from the beginning of the church. We're constantly digging up new ones found in Egypt and Russia and Greece and Rome, just ancient icons being found all over the place. So I think I'm just about done. One last point I actually would like to mention, because it's something I find interesting, is that all icons you'll generally find, the background is gold. The reason for that is gold is generally perceived as a color of royalty and divinity and wealth and those sort of things. So the artist is trying to purvey that the icon is a picture and a symbol of divinity and wealth and importance. So that's why generally you'll find the background of most icons to be gold. So if anyone has any questions, you can find me on Facebook. Sorry I couldn't be there, and I hope you all learned something. Well, have a good day and pray for me.